Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Everyday Arborist podcast. This is episode 6. If you've joined us before now, welcome back again. And if you're just listening, this is a great episode to jump in. We have someone that I'm super excited to have on and have been a fan from afar of him and his journey. This is Steve. Would you say it Connally
Connally.
or Connelly? How do
Well,
you say it?
most pretty
Connelly.
much everybody pronounces it Connally, but it's Connally. I'll answer to whatever.
Okay. Awesome. And your company is Adaptable Aerial Solutions.
Yeah, based out of southeastern Virginia.
Awesome. So I met you briefly in Indianapolis when you had spoke at TCIA. You spoke on initial assessment. That was really good. I took a lot away from that, and I brought it back home to Nashville with the company I was working with at the time, and that was really cool that you had to share. And then I think you had your crane there that year as well
I
set
did.
up,
It was it was
I
on the
was
showroom floor. That was pretty cool.
that was really cool to see that. I was just getting into, I think that was my first year at CHOP. So I was just getting to learn like the knuckle boom crane. So seeing that on the showroom floor, I was like a kid in a candy shop.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think we've kept in touch throughout the years, just, you sharing your journey and me either asking questions or in the comments or just, sharing my appreciation for what you bring to arborists in the industry. And you have like an authenticity to you, a humility, and like this subtle leadership that you are always bringing. So I definitely appreciate that a lot. And I wanted to brag about you up top about just how you're always contributing something positive and sharing your full self. I just appreciate that a lot. So that's awesome.
Thank you. I that means a lot to hear. Sometimes it's a much deeper conversation getting into the shift that I feel like I've seen in social media over the last 3 or 4 years. But sometimes you throw stuff out there into the ethos and you're not really sure whether it resonates or whether people catch it. Sometimes I think that we've gotten to a point where I don't know if like the average person even reads a post anymore. I mean, they look at a picture and if they recognize your name, they click but I don't necessarily know that they
Yeah.
hear the message. So you saying that you've gained something um, means a lot to me. My whole motivation really, it kind of started from the fire department because when I came in the fire department, the old timers, when they had information to share, you listened, and that's how the craft was built for you, right? You got information passed down, and then when you became the veteran, your job was to pass that information down to the next person below you, and it was at no cost to you. It cost you
Yeah.
absolutely nothing. So I've had people in my career who have really made a giant difference, and have passed information down to me, and I just feel like it's the right thing to do. And being transparent is really the only way I can do it. I mean, most people that have followed it
Yeah.
know that that first truck was that was an experience, a huge learning experience, and I shared all of it. No pride, just hoping that maybe I could save somebody from bashing their head against the wall as hard as I had to bash my head against the wall to get to where I was. So that's really, you know, that's was kind of the motivation. It just seems like the
Yeah.
right thing to do to try to help everybody. 3, 4, 5 years ago, um, you could see something happening on the internet. You could be on Instagram. It's really strange. Like Facebook, if you post something on there that's not legit, people will just tear you to shreds. On
Yeah.
Instagram, you can post anything and no one will say anything negative to you. So I don't really know what that's all about, but
Yeah.
some years ago on Instagram, you could reach out to somebody, and I've always reached out to people private message. I've never wanted to seem like I was trying to call anybody out and said, "Hey, can I suggest something to you about the operation of your truck?" Or maybe if you configured your boom a little bit different, or I learned, you know, some pretty important advice from Ben Heller, and I've shared that advice with other people. And a couple of years ago, people were like, hey, whether they decided to take the advice or not, they were appreciative. There was like, all right, here's a guy who's been doing it a little bit longer than me, who might have some miles that's trying to help me out. But man, you try to share something with somebody now and you pretty much impolitely get told to stay in your lane. And I don't really
Hmm.
understand. I don't understand why that shift is there and why, I mean, if 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 an individual that's got thousands of hours operating a crane looks at the way I operate mine and they have something to tell me, I'm going to listen to them. I may not agree with them. I may not do what they say, but I'm certainly not going to scream at them for saying something to me. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on in the world. It's a crazy place.
yeah, it is. I'd love to step back a little bit. I know you mentioned fire, and then you mentioned that you're in the Richmond, Virginia area. But I'd love to maybe hear like a little bit about your childhood, your upbringing, kind of your career development, even the fire side, hearing about that. And I know very little about Virginia. I know the state trees, the flowering dogwood, and I know
Mhm.
every time someone mentions Virginia, they're like, "Whatever you do, don't speed through it." And so that's like the two things I know about Virginia. But yeah, maybe just spend a couple minutes. I'd love to get to know you a little bit more, and those who are listening get to know Steve a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I lived there for 6 weeks, and then moved to New Jersey. So I'm actually a Jersey kid. I grew up in New Jersey. I lived in a
Okay.
town called New Providence. Not too far out of New York City. My dad spent most of his career working in Manhattan. My brother owned a five-star restaurant in Manhattan. I've been going to the city with my brothers and sisters, you know, since I was old enough to walk. So I grew up in Jersey, grew up going to the city. When I was 14, we moved a little bit western over towards the Pennsylvania, New Jersey border, which was pretty rural.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of got into hunting and fishing and the fire department. So I lived in a small town in Hunterdon County, and there was this girl I liked. Her name was Rachel Wyant, and she was on the volunteer rescue squad. So I figured a quick way to Rachel would be to join the volunteer rescue squad. So I joined it. I liked it. I made some friends. They were in the volunteer fire department, so I joined the volunteer fire department and was doing that for a couple years, and then went in the Navy
Okay.
with the expectation I was going to come back to New Jersey when I got out. So I did 8 years in the Navy, and while I was finishing up in the Navy, I got my EMT and paramedic certifications, and then got out of the Navy on a Friday and started the fire department on a Monday. So, yeah, so that
Man.
was that pretty much it. I'm 55. I started volunteering fire and EMS when I was 14. So
Wow.
many, many years. I worked for the city of Suffolk for about 3 years down here, and then I left to go work for the city of Norfolk, um, which was Suffolk was fairly rural. Norfolk was pretty suburban, urban, really fast paced, a lot of fires, um, all kinds of crazy stuff going. The population demographic was right. The income demographics were right that it was a very, very busy city. A lot of fires, a lot
Yeah.
of violent crime, interstate industry, and spent my whole career in Norfolk. I guess I've been retired for about 5 years now. I retired as a captain.
Okay. That's awesome. Where you said you were in the area between Pennsylvania and New Jersey for a little bit. What county or city was that?
So it was Hunterdon County. The actual town I grew up in was Bloomsbury. So
Okay.
nearby landmarks would be Easton, Pennsylvania, Phillipsburg, New Jersey, Allentown, Pennsylvania, Flemington, New Jersey. It's
Okay.
probably 45 minutes north of Trenton on the Delaware River.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I did an internship with a friend of mine in Delaware County.
Okay.
So it's like Chad's Ford, and so I lived up in Media, and I would just like commute into work in Chad's Ford. But that's a really beautiful area. It's like it gets overshadowed from Philadelphia because it's like it's so
Hmm.
close, and people are like, oh, there's it's just the city right there. But really, I mean, just outside Philly, there's really beautiful country and incredible trees around that whole area.
Oh yeah,
Really
Jersey
cool.
Jersey gets such a bad rap. Um, everything everybody knows about New Jersey is from The Sopranos. And the where it was filmed is like all along the Garden State Parkway and the Jersey Turnpike, and it's all industry, and it's interesting. But I just I did this pilgrimage back in December. Went up to see my mom. She's in a nursing home, and I went to see like where I grew up. And one of the towns that I
Hmm.
went to was a town called Summit. And I drove through that town. When I was a kid, I didn't pay any attention to the trees, but I
Yeah.
drove through there as an adult, as an arborist, and man, I cannot believe the hammer of trees that they have on that area of the state. I mean, it's
Wow.
just amazingly gigantic trees in people's yards. So tall. And
I think I remember you sharing some pictures from that kind of pilgrimage trip that were really cool of
yeah.
that small town area. That
Hmm.
looked awesome. Yeah, I think Jersey does get a bad rap, and I think it was a video I was watching a while ago about how actually Jersey's home to some really good dune areas and bottomlands that have kind of marsh-like features to them. It's kind of cool because you don't really you think about that, but all that in between space and even some of the coast is really packed full of a lot of good uh, environments like that. So,
Yeah, for sure. So then I got out of the military, and my brother was down here. He was a police officer in one of the cities, and it just, I'd met a girl. Made sense to just stay here rather than go back to Jersey. Um,
hmm.
so I've kind of been here ever since, waiting for my kid to get out of high school so we can get out of here. I'm pretty much done with Virginia. I'm ready to move.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Did I see the other day he just got his driver's license, maybe,
Yep.
or
Yeah,
it was
he
like an
did.
yeah.
He's got the paper. He hasn't gotten the plastic card yet, but yeah, he's ready to go.
Man, how does I have got three kids and they're all young right now, but how does that feeling handing
It's
over that steering wheel?
um I've been driving with him for a while. I actually started him driving like a couple of years before he was allowed to start driving. We would there's some state park land out here that's got miles and miles and miles of gravel road. So, we would kind of we'd have this tradition on like his last day of school, we'll go for the summer, we'll go do something. And one year we
Hmm.
just went and I took him and we just drove for hours. Um,
Yeah,
so he's had a lot of practice. He's a really good driver, and he's kind of he, of course he's my kid, so I'm biased, but he's a really sort of a like an old soul. He's a really mature kid. Um, and I'm okay. I'm of course I'm sure I'll worry about him, but I'm feel pretty confident that he's going to be all right. So I don't know that it's
yeah,
freaking me out the way it may freak some parents out. I don't know. You have to
yeah.
ask me after
Well, that's
that first
awesome.
night. After the first night, he's supposed to be home by 10, and it's like 10:30.
Yeah,
Check with me then.
yeah, that's funny. Well, that's cool. You kind of have that confidence because you have some intentionality you've spent over the past, couple of years or so, and that is cool that your intentionality and it's cool seeing how you are pumped up and you really cheer on your kids in life. Yeah, that's super awesome that you've been there for them in that way. So
I'm
really
definitely.
cool.
I don't want to take 100% credit because I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not the best dad. I think that I to a degree, when I work, I'm very isolated, and I'm one of those people that spends a lot of time in my head, whether that's healthy or not. So, I'm very adept at picking out my weaknesses and know you know, where I think I could have been better as a dad. But
Yeah,
we all make our decisions and do the best we can, you know, and hope our kids don't repeat our mistakes and just, make their own. So
totally.
just trying to do the best I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, 5 years ago, you retired from the fire service, and I know you primarily not from fire, but just watching your work as a knuckle boom crane owner and operator. And so, I'd love to hear about like, how you got into that. How did you start in tree work, and then how did you delve into, because maybe people listening don't even know about the side of tree work, which is knuckle boom cranes and all that. It's gotten a lot more popular, but when I was in Kansas City, that was kind of like we didn't have one. I don't think anybody in Kansas City did. And then I was like, I feel like I have to join somebody that does this because it seems like the future in some aspect, but it also just seems really, really freaking cool. So, yeah, maybe just share a little bit about your journeys in arborists and yeah,
Yeah, so I guess I'll try not to make it too long because it could really it's an interesting story, at least to me it is. So
yeah, that's okay.
oh, I was in the fire department. My first wife, my son's mom, had a friend of hers whose husband was doing tree work. And I guess he needed somebody to run ropes and knew that I was doing tech rescue in the fire department. So I went with him um, to run his ropes for him on a couple jobs. It was interesting. Not didn't really seem like something that I wanted to do. And he basically was a subcontract climber for another company.
Hmm.
And the guy that owned that company, of course, Jonathan's in the tree and I'm on the ground. So the guy that owned the company, the primary contractor, was asking me, "Who are you? What do you do?" I was in the fire department, did tech rescue, blah blah blah. He's like, "Well, you ever think about climbing trees?" I was like, "No, never even crossed my mind." And he pretty much said, "Well, I'll give you $20 an hour at the end of the day, every day, cash in your hand. Come try it out and see what you think." So I went out there. It was interesting. It was kind of fun. The money was good. I went about 6 months and never touched my fire department paycheck because we all know what tree work is, right? It's 16-hour days and working weekends, and so I was working crazy
Yeah.
and I was making a ton of money. Um, and for some reason, he had me bidding his jobs for him, like so. So he lived in a trailer park. So I would go to the trailer in the morning and I would pick up all the chainsaws out of his living room. And then I would go look at these
Oh
jobs. And
my
I mean, I thought
gosh.
I was doing all right. I was bidding maple trees and I had no idea what I was doing, but I was putting, four or
Oh
five
my
hundred bucks
gosh.
on them, and it was taking me 2 or 3 days to get them taken down. And he was steady. He was not happy. So inevitably I left him and started my own business and
Yeah. Oh
knew
man.
knew nothing. Like literally, I was climbing in a bucket harness with a flip line, my favorite ball cap, and a pair of Carhartt overalls. And I didn't even use a climbing line. All I did was use a steel core. So everything I did, every branch I passed, I unclipped the steel core. Every branch I had to prune, I shimmied out there just on a steel core, and I spiked every
Oh
prune.
man.
I mean, it was, I look back on it now, it was so bad. It was so bad. Never wore a helmet.
I love.
And you know, so I had two near death experiences. Well, one of them wasn't really a near death experience, but I was taking the top out of a maple tree, and I knew I was going to take a whipper. So as the top came over, I went and grabbed the trunk, and I
Ooh.
guess where my hands were positioned were on the bowl line. So I basically ran my finger up into the block. So my
Oh.
finger is inside the pulley underneath the rope. The guy on the ground that I would pick up from the hotel every morning and stop at 7-Eleven to get him, a 40 ounce on the way. He went and got the homeowner, who went and got a neighbor so they could yard this top up so I could get my hand out from underneath or my
Oh
fingers out of the
my
pulley.
God.
So that was like,
Oh.
a warning sign that I ignored. Um, and then we're finishing up a job at night, and I was felling a tree across a front yard, and I had left a spar, but I also left a couple branches on the spar, and I mean, I don't know why I did this anyway. So I felled this tree, and it hit the spar I had left on the way down, and I remember standing there and watching that trunk come right at me. Like everything was in slow motion. It just, this trunk was just coming right at me. It hit me in the chest. It knocked my helmet off, knocked me down on the ground, and I'm not exaggerating. That trunk of the tree landed here and then rolled off my chest. So somehow it hit me in the leg. My leg wasn't broken, but there was a giant bruise. Um, I got up from that. I remember thinking as that thing was rolling off my chest that Newport News Fire Department was going to come cut me out from underneath this tree. It That was it. I was going to be dead. And I walked over to
Oh
my
my
truck and I
gosh.
got in my truck and I called my wife and I cried like hysterical baby. Just
Oh
sobbed
man.
and sobbed. And it was like, that was it, man. That should have been my day. That was the day that I should have died in that front
Oh
yard.
my gosh.
So at that point, I was like, you know what, I can't operate like this anymore. There's got to be a better way to do this. So I found Tree Buzz,
Man.
um, and then Mark Chisholm and his brother had just started a program at Rutgers in New Jersey. So I found
Hmm.
that, and I commuted back and forth between Virginia and Rutgers to go to their certificate programs. Um, I think I was
Wow.
their first out-of-state student. And from there, I had my business started using a climbing line, using proper PPE, learning how to climb without spikes, trying to do it right. And I was in business, my original business, I was in business for about 6 years. Um,
Wow.
and at that point, you know, being a business owner, running a tree service, 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. You're either working or writing
Mm-hmm.
estimates or dumping or fixing or chasing money. And, you know, that work life balance was not there. And
Yeah.
I had to make a choice between my marriage and my business.
Hmm.
And the marriage won, so I got rid of the business. But the sad thing about that
Yeah.
was then I went to work as a subcontract climber and for other companies and worked the same amount of hours because I felt like I owed those guys that were paying me. I felt like they needed me. I needed to be there.
Yeah.
So I
Hmm.
really never regained that work life balance. You know, it took
Yeah.
um, it took the death of my wife and a newborn to kind of smack me, you know, back into reality. And when I went back to work after that happened, the people that hired me to work, I was like, look, I've got one kid. He needs to be picked up from daycare by 5 o'clock. I'm leaving at 3. I don't care if I've got one cut left to make. I'm coming out of the tree at 3 o'clock. Don't ask me to stay longer. And if you don't want to do that, don't hire me. And
Hmm.
most people were kind of okay with that for a while. So I subcontract climb for a while.
Wow.
I worked for a couple companies here and there. Um, and then, at that point, um, I kind of transitioned to the knuckle boom thing. I'll,
Yeah.
and then that's like a huge dump. So I'll pause, and if you have anything before I start into the knuckle boom, it's a
Well,
lot, man. It's hard to sum up like 20 something years. And
man, that was a great summary, and I mean, uh, just really cool story. And it seems like you've been through a lot, but in each phase, you grew from each thing, and your care and your level of attention just each time grew. And I guess a funny thing to go back on is I was kind of thinking it was funny how it seems like you had a revelation of like uh, from going to pick the saws up out of that guy's living room, and then you're like, wait a second, I think I could, like, if I'm doing the bids and I'm also can do some of this work, maybe I just cut out that middleman that I have to go pick gas saws off his carpet, and maybe I just do it myself. Was that kind of the revelation you had of like, wait a second, I think I could just do this?
yeah, it kind of was. I don't know. It was real, and I understand now. Looking back, I totally understand his frustration. But because I was screwing up every bid. I mean, I didn't know, and he honestly, are you going to send a guy out that has no idea what he's doing, that's been working for you for 6 months, and expect him to do your bids? It just seemed frustrating to me to get bitched at all the time because I got the bids wrong, but nobody was teaching me anything, and I just kind of got tired of it and figured out maybe I can make a go of it on my own. Um, yeah, I don't. I guess I just got tired of heading to the trailer park every morning picking up the saws. I don't know.
Yeah. Uh, it'd be fun to hear what was your original like setup. What were you rolling with to go kind of do your own stuff?
Um, yeah, so I went to the local saw shop to buy all my own saws, one of which I still have that's still running. It's a pretty awesome 361, but I went in
Oh
there
man.
and I was looking for a, a 200T, a rear handle, because that's what the guy had me use as a climate saw. And the salesman was like, "Oh, you don't want to do that. Here's a top handle saw." I'm like, "What's a top handle saw?" It's like they make that's wow, this is crazy. Like I'd only ever seen a rear handle saw. So I got a 200T, a 361, um, and I think a 460 and a HT 101 pole saw and a
Huh.
blower. And I was ready to go. A couple rakes. I had a Ford Expedition, and my trailer was a F100 pickup truck body. Have you ever seen those trailers where they
Yeah, oh yeah.
basically
Oh
take the
yeah.
cab off, bend the frame?
Yeah.
So it was it was I was as jackleg as they come. Still,
But that's the every time you see a truck bed trailer like that, you're like that person is getting it done. That is the getting it done kind of trailer.
yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I
That's
used
cool.
to wake up at night with my hands numb because when I would go to the landfill, pulling that stuff out of that trailer would just wreak havoc on those shoulders. So
Oh
yeah, it was brutal, man. It was a
man.
far cry from a $750,000 grapplesaw crane.
Man, that's awesome. You could always appreciate those beginnings. That's
Yep.
awesome. It's cool hearing about the Rutgers thing too. How far of a drive was that from where you were in Virginia up to where it was in Jersey?
About 7.5 hours. So I
Okay,
would,
and was
I
that
would,
every couple weeks or something? Or
um, yeah, sometimes that would be 2 weekends in a row, and then sometimes it would be like a Saturday and Sunday class. If I remember right, it's been a long time. They
hmm.
would have a program that would be a Saturday and Sunday class, and then like a couple weeks later they would have another one. So they had like climbing, felling, um, pruning, um, basically kind of followed along sort of with the ANSI standards as like a topic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they would
Yeah.
bring a guest speaker in. It was a really cool program. I remember standing out there watching, even walking around doing a pruning demo, and I wish I knew the guys that I was in class with, but I remember them pointing out pruning cuts on this tree and looking over to the guy next to me and asking him, how do people get there to do that cut?
Hmm.
Like, I don't understand how you could even get there. Like, how can you get there in a tree? And he,
Yeah.
luckily he didn't laugh at me, and he kind of explained. I guess he clearly knew that I had no idea what I was doing, but at least I was trying to get better, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a
Yeah.
cool program. I'm pretty sure they're still running.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess one of the things I was asking, and you kind of alluded to it as well, of like you didn't know some of the guys you were in the class with, but it'd be cool to look back and see like do a like a data pool on what guys were in that program around that time and who are now like leading the industry or like they're really contributing in big ways to their area. And I'm sure that that program and even what they're still doing has a lot of great effect to it. So that's awesome.
I can tell you, Mark Chisholm did not have a gray hair on him at that point. He was young man. Yeah, all those guys were. His brother Steve was one of the instructors. Yeah, everybody was so young there. I'd say at least 20 years ago. It's got to be.
Wow, man. Um, well, and were talking about just a second ago, like what a change from a the F100 trailer bed to the knuckle boom. Maybe we can start delving into that a little bit. I had about 3 years that I worked with Chop with their crane. They had the 33 and then the 65 when I was there. But um, I'd love to hear about like what got you into it initially, and then as far as my 30,000 foot view of you as an owner operator is, I feel like you set the standard as far as operation and care, and it seems like you hold yourself to a really high standard, and that maybe came from fire uh, as well, and your own personality. But yeah, I'd love to delve into knuckle boom cranes a little bit and hear about your journey.
Yeah, so I guess it kind of started just generally doing crane work. So I got to the point where I was working for a company, um and the whole thing would kind of follow this pattern, right? So I would show up at a company, I would suggest some changes, they would implement some changes, things would get better, the ropes would get replaced, people would wear helmets, and then the honeymoon would wear off, and it would go back to, I just need my money at the end of the day. I don't care what you do. Hurry up, make bad cuts, skip pruning that, spike that tree if you have to, kind of situations. So I was bouncing
Mm-hmm.
from company to company every couple of years, and I would always leave on good terms, but I just couldn't. I I I couldn't deal with the the hack tree work, the lack of
Mm-hmm.
safety, the lack of concern for anything other than the boss being able to make his boat payment at the end of the day. Um, and the I worked with some great guys, but honestly, the level of employee was it was Craigslist. Nobody had a driver's license. Um, everybody was in and out of facilities, and the sheriff pulled up on the job site. They assumed it was for them, kind of deal. So it was rough. So
Mm-hmm.
I did some crane work as a climber, and it was not good crane work. So I kind of really was on a mission to try to improve my crane skills. So
Yeah.
I went to the crane school, the uh, crane safety climber school up in Philadelphia that Crane Man and Mike Teddy, Pete Sosa and Mike Teddy and Rick Hughes was there with his knuckle boom. And that class, honestly, I've got to tell you, that class changed my entire outlook, changed my entire career. Um,
Wow.
it just was the most amazing training I'd ever had. The opportunity to be around the guys that were teaching that showed me that tree work isn't just something you do because you can't get another job doing something else, that there's a level of pride and professionalism and
Hmm.
precision and awareness and physics. And, it just, that upper East Coast is just such a high. I don't know how it is down where you are, but there's sections of the United States that have just such high level tree people. It's not,
Yeah.
the hacks are still out there, but they're not the people that are flourishing. So I went to
Yeah.
the first year at Crane School. I went. Rick Hughes was there with his knuckle boom, um, and I thought it was cool. Um, I really wasn't interested. So when my group was supposed to rotate over to, because there's several cranes, you're there as a group. You rotate between teaching stations. So you'll go to this stick crane for a half a day and do some picks, and then you'll go to another instructor to another crane and do some picks, and then it was our time to go spend a half a day with Rick Hughes on his knuckle boom. And I asked
Hmm.
Pete, is it okay if I just stay here? I'm never going to work with a knuckle boom. I don't have any interest in it whatsoever. I just want to make 10,000-pound brush picks, take a tree apart. The it's I love climbing, doing crane work, setting slings, making those cuts. That's my favorite thing to do. Even though I hate killing trees, crane work is, I think, is the coolest thing. Anyway, so
Yeah.
the first year I didn't even bother um, looking at Rick's truck. I had no interest on it. And then the next year I went back to crane school again because it was that good. Um, and I had started working for a company that had a crane. It was a little 17-ton boom truck. And that guy could operate the hell out of that crane. But I just, again, you've got the swinger with a pine log on the offload side of the crane so the crane doesn't tip over. You know what I mean? Like, there's no load chart on the truck. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm struggling. I'm struggling with this. And I had to do something different. I had
Hmm.
to find someplace where I could be happy, find someplace where I could find a happy medium between the standards of safety that I felt like I needed to uphold in this industry and the employer that was willing to do that. And I couldn't find it. Um, I probably wasn't looking hard enough, and maybe I wasn't being flexible enough, but I couldn't find it. So I was trying to figure out how can I stay in the tree industry,
Hmm.
and not keep bouncing between company and company and company and company every time the honeymoon wears off. And so I started asking Rick Hughes lots of questions about his knuckle boom and how he made money with it and how he operated it and what his business model looked like. And it was pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
about 6 months after that, I called him and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about pulling the trigger on buying a knuckle boom." And from that point forward, Rick Hughes has probably been the biggest mentor for me when it comes to knuckle booms, grapple saws. My builder, the company that built both my trucks, Westminster Hydraulics, Rick Cooney, as another great person that's impacted my career. Um,
Hmm.
Ben Heller from Hiawatha Tree is over the years has reached out to me and given me lots of good advice. Um, so I built that truck. I took a chance. There wasn't anything like it in my market. Um, there was some resistance. There's still a lot of people that don't believe that it's even a crane. They feel like in order to feel like you're doing crane work, even if you only have two people on the ground, you still have to make that 10,000-pound brush pick. Even though it takes them 45 minutes to process it, they still feel like
Yeah.
that's it. You know what I mean? So they see taking a 600-pound piece with a grapple saw, and they're like, oh, that's a waste of time. But I kind of liken it between a power lifter and a endurance athlete, right? So the
Yeah.
stick crane is the power lifter. Takes something really big and it moves it over here. The knuckle boom, I can just take manageable pieces all day long without stopping from point A to point
Hmm.
B, and the grounds personnel aren't getting overworked, and it's manageable and facing the butts the right way so they don't have to work hard. And I'm looking at where the chipper is and figuring out where I should put the butt to make it easiest for them. That was kind of it. I had that first truck and then
Yeah.
upgraded to the truck I have now. And that's kind of the story.
Man, that's awesome. What crane was the first one? Was it
It was a 50. It was a,
okay?
50-meter ton Powfinger uh, with a 125 jib, and I had put that on a used chassis. It was on a 2006 Kenworth T800 that I
Okay.
got for 60,000. And when it was all said and done, I had 75,000 in repairs in that truck.
Wow.
So probably could have just bought a new one if I'd have been able to get the financing at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it felt like that for a while. At Chop, we had that 33, and uh, I mean, there's so many things that could be repaired on a truck,
Hmm.
those especially knuckle booms. So yeah, that's wild. Um, let's see, where was I going for that? Oh, yeah, it was funny you were talking about, everybody wants that 10,000 pound brush, pick coming out, and my current boss tells me the story about he was doing some crane work in California, and I think he would get sent out on jobs, and uh, his boss was like, "Hey, you guys go out and do this crane job." And I think there was maybe two or three of them on the job site, and the climber would take this massive top, the crane would bring it down, and all he would have is like a 201 or just a small little saw to just buck up this massive top and just feed into the chipper by himself. And so
Yep.
it's definitely, I don't know if it's like the ego thing, or maybe like people watching too much YouTube where they feel like everything needs to be the biggest piece the size of the moon they've ever seen. But yeah, I have a huge appreciation for what knuckle booms have done to change kind of the flow of things and make it easier for the whole crew, not just the climber, making a whole tree disappear at once.
Yeah.
So
And, I laugh at, I don't even engage in the conversations anymore. Like, I just laugh at these people that are like, stick crane could have done that quicker with a stick crane, or, that whole knuckle boom stick crane thing. It's just the stupidest argument ever. They're two different tools. They have two different
yeah,
applications. And you can look at my job and you can say, I could have done that quicker with a stick crane, but you don't know what the reasoning was that they hired me to begin with. So, maybe there was a reason. Maybe they didn't have a climber. Maybe they, can't
yeah,
process that piece of material. Maybe the drop zone won't handle it. It's just the the stick crane versus knuckle boom argument is just so dumb. It's so dumb. You use the
yeah.
right tool, the right job. That's it.
Yeah, yeah,
I
totally. One of the things that, this is a side note, but, something that's really stuck out to me over the last couple of years of you sharing your journey on Instagram, me following it, is your gratitude for the people that hire you. And I think that's always stuck out to me. I'm younger. I just turned 30 this year, but every time you share an experience you got to have with a company, you always shared your gratitude for them bringing you out. And I just think I just wanted to honor you and say that I respect you a lot for being somebody who, you have all these years of experience and you have this incredible crane, and you take time to share that gratitude and to uh, share your journey with the people you're working with, which is really cool. So that's awesome.
I appreciate that. It's not, it's there's a lot more, there's a lot more behind the scenes to that. If I'm sure there's some contractors out there that I work for regularly that are probably like want to call you on the phone right now and tell you that I'm the biggest asshole they've ever worked around. I try to, even the job sites that I shouldn't be on that had issues that were overlooked by the primary or whatever, I still try to show those guys gratitude. It's tough, man. It is
Yeah.
really difficult being the sub. It can be intensely frustrating. And,
Hmm.
you know, and I'm not good at hiding my frustration. And when I get on somebody's job site, I absorb that. I absorb their job site. So, you
Hmm.
know, I don't have a, I don't, I'm not good at disconnecting. So I can't really show up, um, and be like, well, you brought me in on a tree that's 120 feet away. I can't do it. That's a you problem, not a me problem. And just feel
Hmm.
good about myself. So I take on that stress of those job sites and it's tough.
Yeah.
So I'm, I'm, I'm sure I know that I can be difficult to work with. I just, I don't know. I don't, I, I appreciate what you're saying, but, I don't, I don't feel like I deserve that much praise in it. Um, cause sometimes it doesn't go good. Sometimes it's real tense.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's some outside voices being used between me and the primary contractor. But what I do try to do at the end of the day, even though if those guys never want to hire me again based on the experience, I still try to thank them. You know,
Yeah.
ultimately they they just put food on my table for the day. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
probably
And I
should have
think,
just let that comment ride.
no, that's totally okay. And I think that's it's honestly a journey that we're all on. I think there's like a lot of times because trees are a huge variable because all trees are like in a different location. They're either huge or small or bad spot. There's primaries where they're going to be as variable, but your biggest variable in tree work is the people you encounter. So it's like you've got your client first of all, who everyone's working for. Then you've got, like, if you're a sub, like in your situation, you're that whole crew, and whoever hired is it's going to be variable, that relationship you have with them. And so I think we all deal with what you're talking about in some way, but it's all about that journey of awareness. And I think you're a very self-aware person, and I don't have to keep going down that road, but I've mentioning the word journey, you are stepping into something new as well. I think maybe if people who are listening follow you, or maybe if they don't, Steve, you are still listing your crane, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do.
Maybe if you take a couple minutes and share about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird. So I was doing things were doing great at the end of the summer in 2023. It was August, and I pretty much had a discussion with my wife that, if September's a good month, I'm ordering another crane. I was going to order another crane exactly like the one I have right now, and I already had an operator picked out that I was gonna try to court, see if I could get him to come to Virginia and offer him some
Hmm.
things that I thought he couldn't refuse. So then stuff kind of dipped in September, and it dipped through the winter and through the spring. It got kind of bad, and then 2024 definitely wasn't as solid as it was had been in the past. And then I went down to Asheville for the storm, and on day three had a breakdown, which cost me thousands and thousands of dollars. and I was down for like 12 weeks.
Hmm.
So all my working capital I had saved for the year got eaten up. And in 2024, I just never recovered. So I typically operate about 1,000 hours a year. Um, and in now this is year 7 of my business. So it's not my first rodeo. So I usually operate about 1,000 hours a year is what the counter on the Crane computer tells me. So in 2024, I operated 460 hours. So,
Hmm.
I'm not a math guy, but you subtract 460 from 1,000, that's a lot of hours that truck didn't work.
Hmm.
So I probably should have listed the truck for sale in the fall of 2024. Um, but I kept holding out, man. I mean, you know, 55 years old. I really haven't climbed but a couple times a year for 8 years. That confidence as a climber isn't there anymore. The skill and proficiency as a climber isn't there anymore. So I held on to that truck hoping, maybe next month will be better. Maybe next month will be better. Um, and it just hasn't gotten better. I mean, um, I've lost a ton of clients. Um, a lot of people a lot of the companies that hired me can't bring me on anymore because they can't afford me on the bid. My market is so low and so competitive right now. You know, a $7,000 tree job that they would bring my crane in with me on, somebody that just came in off the street's going to go do that for 2,500 bucks. And unfortunately, the
Hmm.
homeowners aren't educated and knowledgeable enough to know the risks that they're taking by going with that individual who's insured for landscaping and not tree work. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not getting hired. I'm not getting the jobs. 2025 has been a train wreck. um, so far, I've worked paying operating the crane one day this month. So the truck's for sale. It's got to go. Um,
Hmm.
it's on grapplesawtrucks.com. I'm not going to give the hard sales pitch on it, but I mean that basically I'm just turning over the keys to whoever buys it. 8 years of everything that it's taken me to run that business is going with that truck, all the way down to the
Hmm.
cable for the cell phone. You know, it's it's I put a lot of love and a lot of planning into that truck and into this business, and it's just not sustainable. And it's it's got to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. I did want to give you space for that. I mean, we don't have a huge following, but you never know how the network goes. Like somebody might listen to this and be like, "Oh my gosh, I got to share this with this person." So I did want to, give you
Yeah,
a
I
sec to mention that. And yeah.
I appreciate that a lot. I brought the crane up to I brought a crane to crane school every year that I've owned a crane. So I've been teaching and operating at crane school. This was the seventh year I've had a piece of equipment up there. And I really, I brought it up there this year. Couldn't afford to bring it up there, but I brought it up there for a couple reasons. Number one, because I believe in that school and anything I can do to help. No, number one. Number two, I figured maybe it would get a little exposure being up there too. So I do appreciate you
Hmm.
giving me the opportunity to put that out there.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And if if anybody's listening on Spotify or YouTube on the platforms, feel free to reach out to Steve on his social media. I can mention him in the video links and everything. But yeah, reach out if you are interested and share it with those who might be. Um, but yeah, that's a journey. You're kind of closing a chapter there, but I did want to get into some cool things that it's not new for you. You have done it in the past years, but if any of you follow Steve, obviously I do, but I've been watching some of your work that you get to do with bald eagles, which I know
Hmm.
very little about. But every time I see the pictures and videos, it's super intriguing, and I'm not even going to try to summarize what I know of what you're doing, but I'd love if you just share a little bit about what you do with that. But it's really cool looking.
Yeah, I guess this year was year 9. So I've been doing it. I've been doing it for a while. So I do I call it research climbing because it sounds cool. It makes me seem all scientific and official if I say I'm a research climber. But basically, I'm the hired help for the Center for Conservation Biology, which is associated with the College of William and Mary. So they're ornithologists, they're bird biologists, um, and they work all over the world um, doing bird work. And the thing that they brought me in to help them with is with banding bald eagle chicks.
Hmm.
So they do mature birds as well, but they brought me in to be able to climb up and access the nests and retrieve the eagle chicks and get them down to the ground for the biologists to be able to do what they do, um, and then get the chicks back up in the nest. So originally, the first year I was doing it, most of the work that we did was through a National Park Service program that was the tail end of part of the Endangered Species Act and part of the stuff that had gone on with them over the years with like DDT. If you remember when the eagle population dipped so much because of the prolific DDT
Hmm.
use was pretty much decimating the eggs. So
Yeah.
the National Park Service program was monitoring and tagging. So they would take the eagle chicks, they would get weights, sexes, they would draw some blood samples from them, check for heavy metals, um, pesticide toxicity. So the first year I did it, um, man, we did a ton of work all over the Potomac River watershed, Virginia, Maryland. I was right outside D.C. Um, at Mason Neck uh, State Park, banding eagles. So uh, lately, we've been doing mostly military bases, uh, part of their aviation bird strike program. So the government
Hmm.
brings Center for Conservation Biology in and gets them to tag these birds so they can keep an eye on the migratory habits, what legacy birds are on their bases, what new birds are coming in, um, and we also do some trackers, put some radio monitors on them so they can also be
Wow.
tracked. But it's a really cool gig.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean that's work that people dream of, and I mean it's probably pretty hard to make like a discovery show on it because you got to put like a put a cameraman 100 foot up in a tree. But I mean the other day you shared that picture of like I think you were standing in a nest or like really
Uh-huh.
close to it, and the size of those things is insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, as far as the documentary part of it goes, there was a couple of years ago, the movie's still not out yet, but I will be probably a snippet of a non-speaking role in a documentary that's coming out that is about the biologist who was the author of the Endangered Species Act. And honestly, I can't remember
Huh.
what his name is. But this movie is called There Might Be Wizards. And basically, it chronicles many of the endangered species that made a recovery because of his work with the Endangered Species Act. So they
Wow.
filmed all over the world, all over the United States. They did this. They used us for the bald eagle program because the Center of Conservation Biology out of William and Mary here in Virginia has been part of the Eagle program, since its inception. They've been doing this uh, bald eagle raptor work for a long, long time. So they're
Wow.
featured in the movie. Um, but yeah, uh, Andrew
That is
Jocelyn,
super cool.
Andrew Jocelyn up in the Northeast does a lot of work with raptors, doing rescue work for owls,
Hmm.
and other raptors. I think I saw year before last, Ryan Torchicolo did some banding work for eagles. But yeah, it's a cool gig, and the nest can be pretty massive. Um,
Yeah.
I can think of a couple nests that I've done that I could actually lay down in the nest and have my head and my feet inside the nest. Um, and the group that I work with, they inherited the old records, so they've got documents on bald eagle nests around this area that go back, you know, like the 40s. So some of these nests
Wow.
have been inhabited by bald eagles for years and years and years and years.
That is wild, man. So, like, the picture that I saw, it looked kind of like a maybe the top of like a tulip poplar or something that was
Yep.
kind of marmed up at the top of
Uh-huh.
like a 4 or 5 liter. Is it? Does it kind of happen in the way of like a tree breaks out ages ago and then reforms the top, and they like to form kind of in like that basket configuration where the nest can be supported by a lot, or what? How do you
Yeah,
notice they set up nests like?
most of these trees are intact. They have good tops.
Huh?
It's not they don't typically build in a snag because they like that upper part of the canopy of the tree, gives them concealment and gives them cover, um, and like
Wow.
a roosting point for the adults. So they're usually in some pretty good trees, and it looks like they pick structure like any bird would pick structure, right? They're looking for something
Yeah.
that they can build in. Um,
Yeah.
the real they like pines a lot. Loblolly pines. They're a big fan
Hmm.
of loblolly pines, at least in my area, because that's the coastal watershed is just full of those loblollies. So it's exciting to me to find them in a tree that's a hardwood. Um, the climb is better. You know,
Yeah.
it's easier to throw in to a hardwood than it is sometimes throw into a hardwood than it is a big bushy pine tree. And
Yeah.
it's never easy either because we're in the middle of the woods. So
Are
there's
you big
tons of
shotting?
under.
You big shotting those, or like using like an air cannon, or just straight like hand loops?
Um, so the first couple years when I was still production climbing, I was hand throwing.
Hmm.
Because I used to be pretty fair, had a pretty good range with a throw bag. And then I've kind of moved into big shotting.
Hmm.
Um, it depends on the tree, right? Because if they're near you don't want to run the risk of putting that throw bag in that nest and hitting one of those chicks.
Yeah.
So you really have to choose how you enter that tree. So a lot of
Hmm.
times I'll have to, especially in a pine, I'll have to hit below and then kind of lead climb my way up the branch structure. And then, of course, since that nest is like a bowl, then you kind of have to climb your way up the outside of the nest, you know, kind of from under a ledge
Wow.
to get up in there, and that can be a little squirrely sometimes. But
And then you're probably trying to like not like booger the structure of the nest up too much, because some trees it's not easy to go like, once you get up to the top, obviously you're getting a little bit more narrow, and working around that edge, or that's got to be a lot of, was it a lot of lanyard work, and just trying to work your way around up there.
yeah, it really is. It really is lanyard work. It's hoping that there's something in the top of the tree that I can toss the line over and then just drop it down and kind of yard myself up there, moving rope, alternating
Hmm.
lanyards. Hardwoods are a little easier because usually there's some structure above, but in these
Yeah.
pine trees, the structure above is usually, something about like that. So it's a
Yeah.
challenge. It's a challenge to get in there. Um, the nests are
Now,
usually pretty solid. I'm not really. damaging the nest, even if I'm going up the outside of it. I may break off some exterior branches, but I mean, those things they're bomb proof. They're locked in there.
Yeah, and especially if they've been there for 80, 90 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Are the adults there usually when you're going up to work with the juveniles, or how does that work? Sorry if my lack of knowledge on that,
No,
but
no,
it,
absolutely. So as we're so the whole process starts. Generally, they know where the nests are, and then one of the biologists flies, has a pilot, and they go around and they fly these nests and they take pictures and then they judge the ages of the birds because typically when you're banding, you want them to be less than 6 weeks old. Anything more than that,
yeah.
they're getting to the point where they're ready to fledge. So you can kind of you can kind of spook them to the point where they jump, and that's not really good. So when that's like what you mentioned before, you've got to get yourself in a position where you're not like popping up over the nest real quick, that you can just kind of ease your head over and look at them and determine how many birds there are and where their positioning is. Because if they're on the edge of the nest, you don't want to spook them to the point where they jump. Because if they get
Hmm.
hung up in another tree or get injured on the way down, and they're kind of hard to catch on the ground. So
Yeah.
you you're I'm sorry, I skipped it. Ask me the question again.
Uh, yeah, no, that's really good what you shared. I guess I was just wondering, Nick, do you run into the adults
Oh yeah,
up
yeah, yeah.
there as well?
No,
Like,
usually when we start getting close to the nest on the ground, you can hear them take off and you can hear them call, and generally they'd stay 100 yards out. Like they'll circle the nest the entire time, and stay within visual contact of the nest, but they don't ever come close. They don't dive bomb.
wow.
They don't come in and attack. They kind of keep their distance. Which, from what I understand,
Yeah.
other birds are not like that. Like when the biologists are working ospreys and falcons, it's usually a two-person deal where one person has a broom, so they can fend off the dive bombing raptor while the other person is doing the banding. So I'm real glad that I'm not up there getting attacked by mature bald eagles, because the babies they can
Yeah.
be bad enough.
Jeez. Yeah, that's like it's funny. I kind of thought of a funny bit of like you have two sides of an arborist. It's like you're either, maybe the biologist at the top of the tree, like fleeing the attacking osprey, or you're like, trying to hide from the mean old lady client that's trying to come after you at the base of the tree. So just
Yeah, pretty
it's like
much.
pick your poison there.
Yeah.
Oh man. You doing that reminds me of a guy I used to work with named John Roth, and the company we worked at in Kansas City. He was the guy that everyone called when a client needed a cat out, because he just had
Mhm.
this like ability to just be calm and cool, and he would go up there and they would immediately be like, oh, this guy's definitely my friend. But I guess the reason that uh, I thought of him is like, does it kind of take a certain temperament, and like do you have to get into like a mental space for yourself as you're doing this to like really zone in?
Um, yes and no. I think, like, I don't want to hurt the bird. Like that's my biggest concern, is I just try to be so gentle with these things, like purposeful. I definitely make sure that I'm in charge of the process, but my biggest concern is hurting one of these birds. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
mentally, that's where I'm at, is how can I get done what I have to get done without causing any trauma to the bird. And I also do this other weird thing. So I don't know whether it's age or life experience within the last few years. I've gotten a little woo woo with things. Like I've got these viewpoints that I didn't have in my youth. But when I'm up there with these birds, I take my safety glasses off and I like stop and I look in their eyes. I mean, I,
Hmm.
it, like people are gonna think I'm a moron, but I look in their eyes and they look into my eyes. And if they're causing a ruckus, usually they'll stop. And whether it's curiosity or some kind of connection or some kind of energy thing, I have no idea. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, I just look at them. I try to connect with another living being at some level, no
Hmm.
matter what it is. Um, that's kind of, I
Yeah.
mean, they're still gonna
No.
bite me, but I mean, I I feel like I feel like there's something to that. So that's kind
No,
of the
totally.
mental
Yeah,
side.
I don't think that's really weird or woo woo at all. I mean, at least personally, I think it's all connected, especially, living beings and other animals. Somehow, I can't put my finger on it. I don't think anybody can, but I think it's all
Yeah,
connected. And that's really cool not many people get to have that experience, and it's cool that you get to really connect in that way. And, hopefully for people like doing your kind of work and everybody that we encounter, it can kind of have that calming effect when you're doing that work. And then obviously with humans, we know that when we interact with each other in that way, that there's something unexplainable that happens. So that's really cool that you get to be a part of an experience like that. So that's awesome.
yeah, it's
Uh,
really great. It's one of the really unique things that I've been lucky enough to do as an arborist, that I'm very grateful for. And every time I do it, I try to really reflect on how amazing it is. It's just a cool opportunity, and I'll continue to do it as long as they'll have me or until I can't do it anymore. I had a hip replaced 2 years ago, and um, I couldn't do I couldn't do 2 of the days of eagle work that year, but I was able to
hmm.
squeak in the last the last climb I was able to get. So um, yeah, it's just such a fantastic experience. It's so cool. It's just a really,
Yeah,
really special thing.
man, that's awesome. Steve, we're getting close to time to wrap up. I do want to ask two quick fires we try to add to the end
Mhm.
of our episodes. I think for every arborist, sometimes it's hard to put a finger on what the favorite would be. But do you have a favorite tree that comes to mind, whether it be one singular tree in a certain location or maybe a species?
Yeah, so I can't ever answer any question unless it's categorically. Like if you were to ask me what my favorite band is, I would be like, well, let's go down the genre and we'll pick out the band. So
Yeah,
hardwood would definitely be a white oak. I'm a big white oak fan. I love a
yeah,
farm tree, like a white oak that's in the middle of an old farm because
oh yeah,
just the canopy on those are absolutely amazing. So as far as a conifer, it would have to be a hemlock, not a eastern hemlock and it would be that kind of hemlocks that you would find growing in like Alaska.
yeah.
So that would be I spent a couple seasons in the backcountry in Wyoming, so I'm a big fan of a lodgepole also. But yeah, it would be hemlock and white oak for sure. Would be mine.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a favorite tree. I kind of do, um, and I have not gotten permission to climb it. I've been trying, but it's a pretty amazing tree. It's
Yeah.
it's in a town called Urbana, Virginia. I
Okay.
posted it a while back. I posted a video of it. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to go back and look at that. That's really cool. Um, and I guess last one. This one's kind of a fun one, but since we're called the everyday arborists, I thought it would be fun to ask, what do you eat for breakfast every day? What's your breakfast routine? Are you a simple guy? What you got going for breakfast?
Oh man, for breakfast. Okay. So we're gonna open up this can of worms here. So I'm gonna do my overnight oats. Okay,
Oh
so
yeah.
it is gonna be organic, pre-sprouted, steel cut
Oh.
oats, gonna have also chia seeds and sunflower seeds, and there will be it's gonna be a half a cup of oats, tablespoon of chia seeds, tablespoon of sunflower seeds, a half a cup of raw dairy, because I'm that guy too. I drink the evil unprocessed dairy milk. And then it's going to have a quarter of a cup of the yogurt that I made on my own out of my raw dairy. Um, Organic blueberries, organic strawberries. So I'm going to make that and let that ferment in the fridge overnight. Um, and then I'm going to have a glass of kefir that I've made, which, if you're not familiar with that, it's another probiotic fermented milk drink that you make with
Okay.
active cultures that I mix mine with organic blueberries also. And if I have time, I might have like an egg or two, but usually it's just the oats and the kefir. It's
Man,
coffee.
that sounds like the kind of breakfast that'll turn you into a bald eagle. I mean,
I mean,
you'll be
it's
soaring
really
after
good.
that.
It's really good. I had a big change in an attitude toward health and food some years ago, and
Yeah.
I just try to eat good. I try to do the best I can when I can.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you're
What do you
and
eat
you're
for
a big fit.
breakfast?
Oh, I've gotten into a kick of it's oats that we buy at Costco that are like organic and glyphosate free.
Hmm.
And then I take pecans. And so this is actually at the beginning of a week. So I don't make it at fresh every morning. It's
Right, same here.
so I mix it in a bowl, the oats, the pecans, uh, maple syrup, uh, honey, cinnamon, and a little bit of brown sugar. And I mix that up and then I bake it in the oven at like
Oh, nice.
270 for like 45 minutes. And it kind of makes like a crisp kind of thing going on. And so I think I call them like oats or something, but somehow my daughter, like a couple months ago, started calling them cheddar nuts. They don't have any cheese in them, but she calls them cheddar nuts. And so that's what we've coined it as a family of like, oh, dad's making his cheddar nuts. And
There you
so
go.
I put that together every morning with some milk. And I feel like I've got to be repeatable because when you're like out in the field doing work, like you can't be having like body biome changes all the time. You just
Yeah.
need to like be
Yeah.
able to step into the field and be like, I have a predictable day with my stomach.
Yep. Yeah. 100, one hundred
So
percent 100%. I'm not a back of the chip box guy, maybe twice in 25 years. That's just not my jam.
yeah,
It does not work for me. So, yep,
yeah.
I feel you.
That's hilarious. And I guess real quick, a call back from the beginning. You're a foodie guy, and I was wondering, what did you get your like love of like really good food? You said your brother was a chef,
Yeah, my brother
or
was a chef. My mom was a fantastic cook. All my sisters are great cooks. I learned to cook out of necessity. And then at some point, I really got into food and then I've had some culinary training. I've taken, college level classes on wine and, um, yeah, I'm just really, really like some people, everybody has an art medium that they appreciate. Music is definitely one of mine, but like I can't go to a modern art gallery and really fully appreciate the stuff that's there like other people that appreciate art. But
mm-hmm.
food and the ability to put flavor profiles and ingredients together to me is an absolute form of art that's super important to me. So yeah, I'm a total
Yeah,
food snob. Like I just love that's what I was telling you. We were just down your way and I had two
yeah,
absolutely fantastic meals. You've got to go. You've got to get a Choi. I mean, Chinese food with a southern flair. It was unbelievable. You got to
that's
go.
awesome.
Cocktails are good too.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That's awesome. And next time, if you guys ever come back down to Nashville, maybe we could catch you for a meal or something. That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Steve, I am just super grateful you took out the time. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for hanging in with me here at the night. If you're listening, feel free to check out Steve on Instagram. I'll put his name on there. And, if you do know anyone or if you are interested in his crane, feel free to reach out to him. Or if you need his contact info, I can share it via message with you, the listener. But anyways, Steve, once again, just super grateful for all you shared. And I think there's many people who look back on their careers or what they've learned and they will attribute something to you, whether it be now or in the future. Younger guys like me will remember, I remember that one time I got to meet Steve at TCIA, or he shared this, or I listened to this one Instagram thing he had or saw this. So yeah, I think there's many people that are grateful for what you contributed. So thanks
I
again.
really appreciate that. I'm super humbled. I'm just a regular guy that goes to work every day that makes mistakes and has flaws and, you know, no different than anybody else. I'm just
Yeah.
hopefully my legacy when I'm gone, my son will be able to look and say that my dad tried to be a good man, and that's all I'm trying to do. I just trying to be a good person, live clean, and
Yeah.
pass it on. But
Yeah,
thank you.
that's
It's
awesome. The epitome of the everyday arborist. So thank you guys for joining us for episode 6. Steve and I will catch up on the other side of this, but you guys have a great rest of your week, and thanks for listening. Thank you
thank
guys.
you.